Yo, what's going on, everyone? PPMD here, going to be bringing you guys a different sort of video talking about the Panda controller. I think I've been asked about this a little bit more than I anticipated, so I wanted to hurry and get a quick video out on this. In so quick that the editor might be a little upset that I didn't pass it through him first. But anyway, today, what I want to talk to you guys about, you guys have seen so much hype for the Panda controller, and I know that there are some questions about it. These are not all questions I can answer, such as what will or will not be legal. But what I want to do is I want to go over most of the features it has very briefly, because I think not everyone knows what it has, and talk about kind of what I do like the most, if there is anything I'm concerned about, what other takeaways there are. Very general overview type of thing. We'll see how it ends up going. The reason it's not going to be a more in-depth thing talking about legality and possibilities and impact on the community is largely because I'm just not informed enough on all of these issues. But I still think I can give you guys some value, and people were curious about what I thought, so I figured, well, let's see if I can do something valuable for you guys. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and get into some of the features. I'll talk about the ones that stand out to me most after I go over a lot of them, maybe not all of them. Some of them were stretch goals in the Kickstarter after all, and we need to see how some of those pan out. But anyway, let's get into some features. So first, they have bald buttons, or buttons that are easier to move across. This is a mod you can already do to GameCube controller buttons, but this is going to be standard here. So kind of just a quality of life improvement, makes it easier to slide across buttons if you want to, say, multi-shine. They're also going to make a different control stick. They say it'll be more durable. I don't know what the word is on that from other players, but it's worth noting that that's really important because control sticks can be one of the first things to go in controllers. So making something like that more durable, and I also hear making it easier to handle hitting the ground or something like that. Maybe not a salty controller spike, but a little bit more could be valuable. They have USB or GameCube controller cables, so you can plug directly into your computer instead of having to get an adapter, which can save some cost. Pretty cool. And you can also plug straight into a GameCube or Wii, or use your adapter you have if you wanted to. If you wanted to save space on your computer, for example, the USB space. There's a wire lock as well on that, so you don't have to worry about coming unplugged mid-set, mid-game, last stock, last hit moment when you reel back and you unplug by accident. Nope. Just the whole GameCube will fall over now, so much better. There are a couple extra buttons. There are some extra Z buttons on the back, ZL and ZR. And there are also two back buttons that function as jump buttons. Now, for those jump buttons, we don't really know. Those are not currently legal. Panda is talking to a group of TOs that are working on controller legality. They've been talking to them for a while now. It's not clear if that'll be legal. Currently, it is not. So enforcement of that will be kind of interesting. I'll talk a little bit more about that later. But some other features they have in a different sort of category. They have you can control how high your shoulder button is. So that's how much resistance there is. You can actually make it analog versus digital, which basically just means can you press it part way or only a full press. There's snapback control for your button. There you have buttons on the inside of your controller. That also snapback being a problem on a lot of new controllers, or something you have to usually see a modder to fix, or you have to have something installed in your controller to do. You can now just push a few buttons inside the controller and fix that, which is impressive. And I also read in Panda's AMA they would release different versions of firmware to handle this, because some people wanted a certain number of options, some people wanted a different number, and so they said, okay, we'll just make a whole bunch of options and we'll work with the community on that, which I thought was really impressive. There's some rumble and D-pad switches to kind of make that easier and more streamlined. You can also disable D-pad, no accidental taunting, which is huge. Notch calibration, which would be, potentially for shield dropping. There's also POD calibration, which is a little bit differently. It's more of a Goomwave type feature. You may have heard of this already, where you can control... basically, one of the applications of this is for POD calibration is getting those empty pivots as consistently as possible. And so calibration is also really important too, because if you're controller is being used over time, your stick is going to change. Your stick box will change. The box, the octagonal gate that the controller is in. And so you have to continue calibrating it. But if you don't want to do that, or you want very specific notches, guess what? You also have removable stick boxes. Don't have to necessarily replace the whole controller every time you have any sort of issue like that. And so that's going to be great. It's going to be good for modders, going to speed up their work. So that's just a great feature for the community all around. And speaking of being able to work on the controller, there's a magnetically removable shell, so it fastens to the controller, and then it's easier to take off. Some people were expressing worry with this being easier to steal. I think that's fair, but it also makes it easier to work on and work on for yourself. There's a Pro shell, which has a wider grip, and it seems to be more ergonomic, which is pretty interesting. And then the Allen wrench that comes with it will also help with you just adjusting it and everything like that. There's button swapping and remapping. And so button swapping is something like you can make XA and AX, but you couldn't make the Y button X and also have XB. Well, that's not the best example. They're both jump buttons. Y be A and X also be A. I think that's more of how that's supposed to work. Someone will correct me if that's not quite right. But the real thing that they're also going to roll out is button remapping, and that's one that's more in a legal gray area, kind of like what's going on with the Goonwave as well. You will notice that a lot of these things that we're not so certain about, Panda will share all of these features with the Goonwave, maybe some additional ones like the extra buttons. Remapping would be, being able to have multiple buttons be, or extra buttons be jump, or extra buttons be the B button to make it easier to multi-shine or something like that, which is currently illegal. And so I already talked about some of the calibration, and then the polling on the controller will be equal to a stock standard GameCube controller, although there is a wireless mode, and if you would choose to use that, I would imagine there would be some lag. But yeah, so that's all pretty good there as well. I know people might be concerned about that with the other features. Did they look at polling? And certainly they have. The controller can remember settings, just a nice quality of life thing. Panda is working with the modders for individual parts so they can get those out to them, and modders can work with the controllers en masse. Not a controller feature, but something to kind of keep in mind as part of the controller rollout. And Panda is also supplying potentiometers to help with helping fix some other wear and tear on the controller. So it's a separate issue from stick boxes. Sometimes it's the potentiometer and not the stick box that's an issue after use or after sitting on it or whatever. And Panda might rework being able to replace those more easily, but it seems complicated and admittedly outside of my understanding, so I'm really not going to get into it more than that. You can ask someone a little more involved about that sort of situation. But anyway, those are most of the features, maybe all of them. I was looking around a little bit and trying to type up everything I could. I think those are most of the features that the Panda controller has. What I was most interested in personally, most blown away by, was the shell being removable, the wrench, the snapback, all the shoulder button height, like all the stuff that you would go to a modder to do initially is now just there. You don't need a screwdriver. It's just easy. And for someone like me who was never going to take his controller apart, he was too worried about it, even if I wanted to clean it out, that's now just made so much easier. I think that's really cool. I think it makes controller work more accessible. Just huge quality of life improvement, and helps you work on your controller and maintain it and keep it healthier. I think that's wonderful. I know that competitively there are other interesting things about it too. A lot of them are things that are shared with the Goonwave, but for me, just those quality of life changes were so interesting, and I was really blown away by the care that was taken with that. And I think the other two things that really also stood out to me I didn't mention was the shoulder button height and the stick box removal. Just again, especially the stick box removal was something I hadn't even considered being a possibility. But just seeing a separate little gate like that I thought was super cool. So liked the effort put into that. You can really tell Panda was telling the truth when they said, oh, we're talking to modders and community figures and roundtables and figuring out what they would like. And some really awesome stuff has come from that, so really hats off to everyone in the community and, of course, Panda for taking that into consideration. And so with all of this stuff kind of coming together, I'm wondering, the price point being a lot lower than the Goomwave, having these easier features to work on, being easier for modders to work with, having these firmware updates for legality or not. It does feel to me like it would be a more accessible Goomwave, and also it'd be mass produced, easier to get to. So that's kind of where I'm sitting at with it. Maybe the Goomwave develops some new features. Maybe the Panda takes those features. We're not sure. The controller's arms race is still going on right now. This is a very unique situation, a pivotal moment in Melee's history where we have to really figure out what we can and can't do with controllers, what's fair and less fair. And so I'm not sure where that goes. I'm not part of those discussions. I'm just not as informed. But this is an important time in the community to figure out these things. So I want to at least make you guys aware of that. And let's suppose you go to a tournament with a Panda controller, but there's no UCF, such as for the Panda Nintendo circuit, which will probably not have UCF. UCF is still beneficial with the controller in some ways, such as for shield dropping. Panda themselves confirmed this in their AMA. You would still need to get notches for that. Although maybe there is some way with notch calibration that could come out later that might not be the case. But again, those are just their words. If there was a concern, because I was thinking, what could be a problem with this controller? Is there anything that could really do harm? And honestly, the only thing I could think of was there's so many cool features on this, and it turned out pretty cool and pretty exciting. If I had to be worried about anything, it might just be that Panda has a monopoly on the GameCube style controller in the future. But of course, we do have box style controllers from other people, which, there's not, I don't know how much overlap. There'll be probably not so much. So there will always be some type of competition, which is healthy, but not in the still much stronger, at least at the moment, GameCube style controller market. So something to be considering, and hopefully Panda is mindful of that. But they do seem like they are working with the community well for now, which is great. If there was any other concern, it would be, can Panda really deliver all of these features, right? We don't really know all the details yet. There are tests going on at CEO this weekend, but it's not the final product, and so we have to kind of see how it develops. But I think right now, optimism is warranted and something to be enjoyed here. And if I had any other takeaway, if I wanted to give you guys something else interesting to take away from this controller, it would probably be that I think many people say that this community doesn't have money. I mean, we've raised over $1 million for this controller in a day, maybe less, which I think is really impressive. And so I do think that at least when the demand is there, when it's something that really helps the community, I do think that we do have money, we do have projects we can do, we can make things happen. And so I don't say this as a way to shame people. I more so say it as, if you think a project can't be done that would be beneficial for the community because of money, maybe this can say, well, maybe things can be done. I know this is a bit of a unique case, but I thought this is at least something worth considering. And something related to this would be how we adopted Smash GG pretty easily, despite that not always being the type of adoption process you see in other communities. I know there were some articles written about how surprising it was how quickly the Melee community adopted it. So I think when we really like something, we really go for it. And I think that's pretty cool of the Melee community. I want to just shout out everyone for that. Well, yeah, that's it. My quick and dirty thoughts on the Panda controller. Hopefully you guys find this video interesting. If you kind of like the wild, uncut style of this, you guys can let me know about that as well. But hope you enjoyed, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.